Welcome to the Auric Investigators Podcast with Vicki McHale, a mutant 4/6 emotional generator with a line 1 motivation, and Lauren Wenzel, a collective 5/1 mental projector. Join us as we deep dive into off the beaten path subjects. But be careful, because we might just make you think, or even better, burst a few outdated bubbles around what you've been led to believe is truth. Agree or disagree, it's okay, because we have nothing to prove. So let's get started.
Hello and welcome to our podcast and YouTube channel with your hosts, Lauren Wenzel and Vicki McHale. And we have a very, very special guest, Yves LeBlanc. And Yves is a very special client that I had the privilege of recently working with, incorporating his human design. And Yves, I wanted you to come on because I just saw so many opportunities for us to play and talk about so many things human design. And Yves, he is a 5/1 splenic projector with completely individual channels. And our beautiful Vicki here, she is a 4/6 emotional generator with also individual channels. And I just thought that this would be a great topic for us to go into, talking about human design, the individual channels and circuitry, what it means to be an individual, and then really highlighting Yves' magic as a projector, because the projector aura type is very different from the generator aura type. And I just wanted to bring this energy, this amazing essence of Yves, and then highlighting also like Vicki and the individual, and then seeing how other people can relate to being an individual. So Yves, I really want to invite you to just share from your heart, your journey as living a projector, what kind of popped recently for you as you contemplating like your design a little bit more, and anything else you want to share. And I'm sure me and Vicki will have some questions as you're sharing too. So if you want to take it away, Yves.
The first thing that really pops up for me, like one of my biggest challenges, is understanding this nature of the 5, the heretic. And it's something to get to a place that you're okay, or that I was okay with people judging me or people projecting upon me. And I had to really go through some extremes of having people that I held really closely really see me as the Antichrist. It was a complete flip, and it was really to like stay in presence of that, and not trying to wrestle with them and not let them have this projection of me and try to prove them how I was wrong. And it's been such a trip.
Yeah, the 5. I'm also a 5/1, so I could totally relate to what Yves would share with being a 5 and a 5/1, and just that deep projection field. The 5 is the deepest projection field from all the lines. So what do you feel like has popped more, like kind of unfolded more as you've been contemplating what the 5 is for you? Have you noticed any shifts with your profile? Because the profile, it's about 70% of our design.
Well, for me, it's just been a greater sense of peace with like making peace with that. And I sent you messages in our work together, because it was like I was so terrified that if I let those people go, or I let them hang on to that projection, that like I would be in lack. And I was so grateful to have 2 other women reach out and say like, oh my God, I appreciate you being so masculine and how you lead and this. So like for the one that was angry in this, like, oh my God, you are, what's wrong with mankind and men, I had other women come back and like just out of nowhere send me these messages like, I so appreciate you. And it was something that I had to go through, almost like break through this barrier of allowing myself to be and not putting my energy where it doesn't really serve, to get that feedback that I was terrified I wasn't going to get, or that I was trying to previously, I would have tried to force it out of one specific person. So now it's just kind of making peace with people are going to see me in the way they see me.
Yeah, totally. Like what really stuck out to me just now is like that projector aura type. So like you being a man and like leading more with your masculine, but then also having like this experiment and contemplation of waiting to be recognized and waiting for the invitation. What has that been like for you?
So like waiting for the invitation is a strategy like from day one. Um, there's been a lot of, I'll say, frustration in not really understanding it. And it's especially early on because I've noticed I would perceive things like sometimes I would perceive like an invitation energetically, but then I could see someone be stuck in their head about it. And like there was like a disconnect between their energy and their head. And then I would try to lead and try to force them to see things correctly. And I'd be so bitter doing that.
Yeah, and the bitterness is the not self of the projector. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but can you talk a little bit more about that too?
I just have to laugh at that because as the only generator in the room, I have to laugh at the and trying to get them to see it correctly.
It's a projector thing.
It's a projector thing. And I have to ask you, it seems to me like the 5, and I have a couple of line 5s.
Mhm.
In many ways, it's almost like a reflector reflecting back to you because that 5, that projection field is almost like in many ways, you have a profile or an aura type like a reflector because that projection is it's the same. It seems to me that it's the same.
Well, there's some space there. And to me, when I look at the types like that, like reflector and projector, especially when projectors have a lot of open centers, like it's like a spectrum more than it is like a distinct like aura type. Like with a head projector with only 2 defined centers, or even like someone with 1 defined center, they're almost a reflector. Like,
Oh yeah. I've got 6 open centers, so.
But this is a recent revelation that I had, and I like the word kink to look at things. Sometimes we get a guilty pleasure out of it. And I was loving playing the man who would trigger women because it was like, huh, see, if you would have listened to me, you would have known I was right. Now you're triggered. It's your own fault. So there was some kind of unconscious stuff going on there. So I don't know that like as a 5 or like, I have to trigger others. And that's something I've been kind of dancing with and exploring with, like trying to come to terms like, well, I'm going to trigger some people, but also like, I guess I kind of liked how I triggered people because, and again, I was trying to force people to see my point of view. And going back to the whole invitation is that I wasn't often recognized. So like I would be getting invitations, like I'm like, oh, that's invitation energy. But because there wasn't that conscious recognition, there was like this disconnect there. And I think that was the biggest frustration is for my energy type is that like I was picking up on all these layers and quote unquote, I knew I was right. So I was picking up something that I couldn't understand. And it was always about me projecting like, well, if only they saw me, if only they understood, instead of just allowing myself to have others who want to recognize and see me and ask me for my wizardry come to me. And like one thing that I see that's exceptional across all profiles, there's a theme of patience. I don't care if you're a generator or a reflector, any of the types, like patience is it in its own way in each type. And my particular patience, like I have to wait to be invited and let go of that fear of like, oh, what if I'm not invited? Like, what if like that like kind of crappy invitation that they see me a little bit, but they don't see my whole like spectrum of what I could offer them? What if I have to settle for that? Because like I much prefer that than nothing. And it's like, all right, wait. Oh, like I want to pay you this much and I'm gonna fly you out. Or the other things where like there's like these like golden invitations. And that's still a process of where I'm at, where it's like, okay, like having trust, faith, and belief that like those mega invitations are coming. So to not be like, oh, I'm gonna fill my time and energy with these like meh. Like, yeah, I'll read your chart. I, I like human design charts. I'll read them for people, but it's not like wizardry for me. Not like Lauren does.
Yeah, me and Vicki will talk about human design forever.
Oh my gosh, when we get together with my open throat and her projectorness. But it just hit me as you were talking because Lauren did show me your chart before we came in. And with your splenic intuition being one of only 4% that have that intuition, and then you've got so much of the individual knowing channel as a projector, and also going right into that G center, like your intuition and your knowing, you're absolutely right. Like you could feel that energy, that invitation is there. And it kind of came to me, it's almost like there's a big Christmas package sitting there staring at you in the face, and you're so excited, and then they give it to somebody else, and that like that's what it would be like to me. It's like it's coming. Wait.
Or like the restaurant when you order something and it's coming right towards you, and then they give it to somebody else because they ordered first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because I was telling Lauren today, I went out last night and I have an open throat. And so I have had to learn to just sit there and be quiet and wait and allow, myself to draw the right people in. And I'm sitting there last night and, there's some people like I'm kind of interested in or what have you. And all of a sudden I realized like I'm sitting here by myself and I'm just as attractive or more so than everybody else there talking, and I'm alone. And then I really started feeling into this, like people really can't see me. And then the person I wanted to see me completely didn't see me. And then the person I didn't necessarily want to see me came up. And then immediately it was the right person. They're getting ready to start like this conscious dating app. And I was able to bring in human design. And then we spent the next 2 hours geeking out, but it really made me see how that is for me. So for me, even as a generator, I still have to kind of wait for that it's almost an invitation, even though it's a response. So I feel y'all.
Yeah, and like, oh, the invitation, like, and that's where the bitterness is. Like, if I explore that theme, so I've done so many things across the years. I did personal training, which led me to energy work and like conscious coaching, now going into like polarity, masculine, feminine. And my biggest bitterness, usually it's turning bitterness into drive, into like, ooh, there's something that I want. But it was like seeing others offer something and like they're being paid well for it. People are like lining up, and you're like, or I was like, huh, all right, they're offering a level 3 service. I offer level 9.5, and like I got crickets. Like, why? And it's that energy that actually keeps people stuck. So the last time I went to a wellness fair under like the title movement healer, like I played with energy, see blockages in the body, and like it's like, oh, you want to get rid of that? All right, why not? And then play with it, and kind of then once the energy is moving, it's just like the muscles release. It's really easy, and like, oh, it's fun for me. And I made a conscious choice. I'm like, okay, you know what? Like I've been here before. I've been bitter. I'm not going to be bitter today. I'm just going to have fun. And I had like 3 or 4 different types of books from different things that have inspired me. Nothing human design there, but I had like an anatomy trains book, this like fascinating thing. I had some tantra books. I had different things, and depending what people looked at, and if they asked me about what I did, then I would talk about that, because like the movement healer is me putting together a lot of things. And one name that was given to me by a native elder a few years ago was he who heals from all directions, Blue Wind Walker.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And you have a defined G.
So it's like, all right, what do you need right now? And it's like, I'm just got all these balls that I'll play with, and like, oh, let's use this one, let's use that. But it's staying out of that bitterness, and more, and when I'm feeling more embodied and when I feel more positive, I'm recognizing bitterness not as like a negative thing, but it's like, oh, this
Mhm.
person has something that I want, and it's getting out of my own way. And before I knew anything of human design, I had to be so bitter before I actually changed.
Mhm.
And I wanted to be a personal trainer out of high school, and it took me about 8 years to do it. All the self-doubt, all the things I had to look at. And there was a particular trainer in the gym. This was back in the days of Gym Tan Laundry, Jersey Shore, the big TV phenomenon. He was a bro, and he did something to me, was just, it was so ridiculous. And I just looked at the situation and I told myself, like, well, I know that I won't necessarily be great or good, but I can be better than this. And I just started out of bitterness.
That's amazing. So, how long? I want to ask you a little bit about your human design journey too, because I know you don't really like, that's not where your mastery is, but you have been incorporating it because you are a projector. And I think
Mhm.
it is so important, even if projectors don't incorporate human design, it just kind of helps them know that, because we're like the newest aura type. We've only been around for a little over 200 years. And so, like, how did you get exposed to human design? What's your journey been like? And then a little bit of like what's been unfolding as we worked together.
Yeah, so I'll do that in three stages, because looking back, I'm kind of seeing three stages. So my first exposure to human design, I worked with a business energy coach. Um, and she said, oh, like, I think it was new to her. She just like got us all to do our charts. She's like, you're this type. And all I got was like, wait for the invitation. I was like, okay. So like it must have piqued something in my interest. I didn't really go further into it. And I was like trying to understand this whole invitation thing without really going into it. And I kind of just left it aside, like, oh, okay, it's cool, but there's nothing big there. And then gradually, like I had a friend who, well, at first we did an exchange. We just met each other online and we did an exchange, and she started going to my chart. And the way I started to connect with human design beyond anything like astrology, it was like giving myself permission slips to be me. And like I can remember these like epiphanies. It was like, oh, it's like I'm not supposed to climb a tree. I'm a fish type of moments. So like when I struggled in sales as a personal trainer, like it was like, oh, I was so anxious around it. And I find out that I don't have gate 26. I'm not naturally like apt to like convincing people to close on something or to convince them that. And I was like, oh, like all this guilt, this stress, this stuff just went away because I'm like, I wasn't supposed to be. And it's just been many collections of those elements. And then, so I had a few of those and I was good. Then about 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to study human design. And I didn't know how I was going to show up. I was like in massage school at the time. I'm like, how am I going to do this in massage school? I don't know. Well, universe had different plans. I ended up working on a farm. And it was an experiment because there was another very not self projector, which to me, he was like a rooster who thought he was a hen, and a bunch of generators and manifesting generators. And I tried to keep up with them and I got exhausted. And it was only when I took myself out of those auras and went to a hike somewhere else, I followed my intuition, which was strange. I'm like, why do I have to go hike somewhere else? Like I'm in nature all the time. And 20 minutes out there, I was like, oh, they're all generators. um, and that's when I had to really start facing that, like my gift, my value was something else. And there was like a particular time, it's a big task. We were four people trying to move a massive log, and they were going to effort so hard. And I offered a suggestion. They're like, no. And then we started like, okay, fine. Let's not listen to the projector. And we're trying to pull this in the mud. And then one of the women who was there was like, why don't we try Eve's idea? And after, what was interesting, there's a woman there, 100% generator or manifesting generator. Her nickname was the engine. So someone turns to me and they go, you know what? She's the engine but you're like the supercomputer. And a lot of times people would ask me for my help to figure out something. And the magic of the auras, this was like, oh, it happened like so many times that summer, was that I would start to walk towards them. And before I would even get there, like something would click and they'd be like, oh, and I would just kind of jokingly say, but kind of half serious, like, all right, next time it's $20. Because there was something about just my energy, like how the energies interacted. So that was when I really first started to like look at all kinds of charts and see what the differences are and try to investigate for myself and try to associate certain things in my personality with gates, channels, and my energy. And then throughout the years too, what I started to, I look at a lot of things like channels, like the channel of struggle. It's like, all right, like there are different levels of energetic embodiment. And I don't know if it's we embody it or don't embody it, but it's like, all right, if I'm going to struggle, might as well be worth something. Because like I've had relationships that were struggles. And the only thing that we got out of the struggle was more pain and suffering.
Oh, you have the 2838.
Yeah. And it was like, did I ever persist and fight through and go based on the programming that I had, what relationship should be, like, oh, you're supposed to fight for a relationship and all that, and like, ugh. And looking back, it's like I stayed in that. Oh, it was a 2-year relationship, probably 18 months too long.
Well, try just having the 38 and an open spleen, Eve.
Which one's the 38? Is that the fighter, or is that the
that's the fighter and knowing what to fight for? And then you have
right
the spleen, and yeah, so lovely. Well,
so
I have
then,
a question for you. May I ask a question? So once you were with this group and once the manifesting generator recognized you and you became the book of knowledge here, was that a permanent invitation? So for the rest of the time you were welcome to give your input, or did you still have to wait for invitations after that? Or was it iffy? How does that work for you?
I'm gonna have to reflect on that for a second. Let me just think, because now that I kind of, I don't think it was necessarily a permanent invitation, but I did see that I was being asked more. So over the course of time that I was there and that my solutions worked, like, and there's something too that like I was like, huh, like after 2.5 weeks there, I'm like, we had a meeting. And I'm like, I can't do this all summer. Like, I can't do this firefighting. Like, we have to make some kind of plan. And in group meeting environments, I find there's like that implicit invitation. So as my ideas were making sense and people were able to see them as I was able to voice them in those kind of areas, then I was more invited. So I can even think of like there was no invitations there. Like there was just like a disconnect. But with others, there would be like, okay, like this guy knows stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because when I have with my open throat, I attract projectors like strippers attract dollar bills. It's just like they see me, I see them. So I make sure that when I know somebody's a projector, I give them that open invitation once I'm comfortable with them to say, you know what, this is your permanent invitation. You're welcome to say to me whatever you want. But if there's somebody I'm not quite there yet, I won't give that allowance. Like with Lauren, she knows she has invitation to say whatever. And if it's something that I wasn't expecting or didn't necessarily want to hear, then there's a reason that she said it and I had to hear it.
Well, I think there's some parallels there into like relationships. So one is like, as a masculine man, I do love to provide and to help. So I love receiving those, and there's can be some feminine and masculine dynamics there, where like the more I'm asked, like there's just it's a pleasurable experience for both parties interested, like in there. But then there's the element of it's like consent. So different types of relationships, you'll have different levels of consent. So you can have relationship with a man or with a projector that consent is like, you're like, you know what, carte blanche, like anything you got, like you wanted to like lay it on me, sure. But that can also be like changed at some other time. One big aha with Lauren, and it was like, oh, she said something, and it was like the invitation is going to be taken back.
I revoke your invitation. That's like a vampire thing, right?
But in recognizing that, it's like, because before that, I thought like, no, they invited me, and like, you want to really make a projector bitter, and they don't understand it, have an invitation revoked because you're still going like all this energy, you're like full throttle, like, I'm projectoring. You said yes. But then it's like consent. It can be revoked at any time. And it doesn't mean that because you invited me to share on this topic that you want me to be like, oh, I've noticed all these 18 things that are present in your aura right now that are going to affect you in this way and that. Like, it doesn't mean that it's like you would come in for like a 10-minute meeting massage and then I'm driving my elbow and you're like in your piriformis, right in your butt cheek, and you're like, like there's levels of consent and invitations.
So I have a question, and well, I'm the right angle cross of tension, so I'm here to provoke people, hopefully in the right way. So here's what I'm going to ask, because I'm an individual, and I know my whole life I've been told, you never listen to anybody, you never listen. I've literally had conversations with people where I've answered and walked away and have no idea what was said. Like I could recite it back to you. So when you are coaching somebody with so much individual circuitry, is it more difficult, Lauren? Like, is there a deafness there, or like, was it well received? What did you notice any of that?
So Eve has split definition too. So anybody who has split definition, they just need a little bit more time for things to come into them because they're receiving information through two different circuitries. So if somebody just has one single definition, it'll come to them wherever their definition is. But when somebody has split, it's like they're processing it through these two different circuitries. And I'm just saying this as somebody who's observed this with other people who are split. The ahas will come later. So I always am like, if it doesn't resonate now, like just think about it, just give it some time. There's no pressure. But with individuals, it's like I can give the information, but it has to pop for them in their specific way. Or they'll notice like, well, I don't really know if I agree with that. I'm going to have to contemplate that. And then it shows up for them the way it's supposed to, because they're here to mutate. There are people that recognize them. So because I'm completely collective, so I'm here to just share. I'm here to share what I know, what I've experienced, what I've investigated and researched as well. But for the individual, it's like, well, that might not, like maybe 90% of it might not be true for them, but that 10%, they can take it and then they mutate it for the 90% other percent, how it shows up for them. So Eve, what do you feel like that was like with your individual channels?
You know, hearing you both talk about that, the first thing that came up is I've always kind of figured things out my own way. Like even as a child, I would always be, it's almost like this, like, yeah, I know you're right, but let me figure it out. And let me take this. And with you specifically, what was so interesting, and I relate this to being a projector, and I hire you specifically because you're a projector, is you were able to transmit a vibrational frequency of things. And I would sense this, and you would ask me often, like, does that land? Does that make sense? I'm like, my answer was kind of like it doesn't make sense, but I felt something. I'm sure it'll be fine. And then usually interactions, what would happen, because like I had some support with Messenger, I would then come back with like 3 or 4 questions. So that again, like investigator, I was like, okay, it's like, you were like, Eve, here's the trail. If you walk down right now, it's fine. If you don't, like, just the trail's there. And then later when I was on the trail, I'd be like, oh, is there supposed to be a rock there when I get to this place? And you'd be like, well, think about this. I'm like, okay. And then we would have this exchange. And that was me kind of like walking that path and investigating. But I didn't have an attachment to get right away, because it's like part of me knew, like, that's not how I function. I don't get those ahas right away when someone gives me information. I take information, and it's almost like I got to put it through the ringer. I gotta interact with it. I gotta write it. I gotta do something with it for me to get this like click aha. And what's interesting too is that if I were to go in my next relationship now, I would be sure my partner knows that about me. Because nothing frustrating more for my feminine partner is that I saw that they would tell me something, and then 6 months down the road or 5 weeks or whatever, like, oh my God, you wouldn't guess what so and so said. And they're like, I've been trying to tell you that for 6 weeks. And again, it was just me finding the source that I could like connect with, and like getting on that trail and exploring and then integrating it. And then like that's like, whoop, and I would quasi never link it to anything that like my partner would have shared, because it was just like the seed, but then all this process that happened in between.
And you were completely unaware of the process.
I had an idea of the process, but not as like it's like right now, kind of just like the whole split definition that Lauren explained 6 weeks ago didn't make sense until right now. Case in point.
And I love how you described that metaphor. That was brilliant. And I do see that as like your channel of inspiration too. It's so creative, and then it just comes through. And then also how you described it, that's like living your design. Like you get the information, you kind of process it, and you're like, okay, sort of this makes sense. I don't know. But then leaning into your splenic intuition of like, okay, yeah, I feel maybe. And then you have the popcorn like ahas, like, oh, this is what it is as I'm on the trail. Oh, wow, this is the rock that, is my obstacle that I get to go through, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And that's how people actually live their design. It's not, it is the intel, but it's the experiential process more than anything, because then something in us, in our DNA, in our energetics shifts. So I loved your share on that.
And the words again are trust and patience, right? Not impatience, but trust and patience. Because, to brainstorm and try to figure something out, like I have an open head and I have like one gate there, right? And it's like this unknown, and it's just knowing, I don't know why, but I know. And like, it was like my journey was to trust that intuition more and more, but also to not push. Like I've winged speeches for Toastmasters, which is an organization where like people work on their speaking skills. I got a standing ovation. And I was told how well structured my speech was. I winged it. I thought about it. I chewed it. Like I had an idea what I was going to say and what points I wanted to hit. And I spent time within kind of like the bath and kind of with that. But it wasn't this like, oh, I'm going to say this, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And the more I've allowed myself to be in that flow, the better the results. Before, when I was in high school and I tried to like write notes of what I wanted to say, I would be so nervous, and just like I would only say a fourth of what I wanted to say, and blah, 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 and it was a big mess. And just deciding what direction I want to take the speech, having these ideas, reflecting on it in the week, and then coming with like, all right, I'm bringing some truth here. Like, let's just like serve people. Let's try to give value to everyone that's listening, and let's see what flows out. And I think that's my 56 too. Like it was a collection of stories. So each story was like, all right, let's weave something with all these stories.
Very cool. Well, Yves, I would like to know more about your healing protocol, your wizardry. Can you tell me how that works, or?
I'll tell you about movement healing first, because that's the one thing. So movement healing is, I think there's a 7-year journey in there, from personal trainer jumping to energy work, seeing what was connected with emotions in the body. And what's cool is like I can do it online. Like we could test on Lauren in a few minutes, and I see things in the body. It's like I see these spots, and I remember praying for medical intuition as part of this oracle card deck like 5 years ago. So what I weave through is like, all right, let's be present. Let's acknowledge what energy is here. And then through intuition, like, okay, like you want to forgive your father about this? And like, when you touch here, what do you feel? And it's really leading you through an organic process of like seeing what's there and releasing it. So there's another certification that I took. It was called Freedom Leaders. It was an NLP based modality that a man created, and it's called belief tree work. So it's really seeing like, okay, like, do you want to let this go? No. Okay, does this serve me? And these series of yes and no questions that lead you to really just dissolving the energy. And once you do that, there's really not much keeping the tension in the muscles. And then I can often layer on top of that, like in person, I do physical, of course, but I've coached women and men to do it virtually. And then there's also like a bit of what you want to create instead, because in coaching, whether it's life coaching or like movement healing, just because you take away this tension or this stagnant energy doesn't mean that there's a proper structure in place. So that can mean creating a different movement, playing with your shoulder, or getting you to stand and exercise in a certain way so that you're actually starting to install like a new software. And in the coaching dynamic, which I also do one-on-one life coaching, it's like, okay, what are we going to replace this with? Like, you've had this energy here all this time, and it was like trying to hold this in or trying to move forward or stop movement, whatever it may be. But what do you want to create? And then giving your body, your mind something else to focus on. So it's really about taking the process of removing and getting you to choose to remove something, because that's why most people go recurrently to different massage or the other physical practitioners. They don't address the energetic protection mechanism. So let's say that you have something in your back and it's there as a memory because you're holding on to it and you want to stay safe. Well, I worked on a woman's shoulders for 40 minutes, and it was a practice. It was an exchange I was doing with her. And she's like, oh my God, like, I feel so great. And her shoulders are like 1.5 inches lower. And not more than 20 minutes later, she went outside in the windiest part of the city with a jacket that was too cold in Canada here, and her shoulders got jacked up right again. So there's so many layers to what presents in our physical body, and I invite the exploration of the deeper layers and facilitate that process. And most of it's holding space. Like I've had sessions with women, especially, where the process is like, hey, what do you feel here? And then the tears start right away. And it's just holding that safe space for that to be expressed. Because let's face it, a lot of times women have an emotional situation. It's not safe at the time to be there and to be in the emotion. You have to get out. It's self-preservation. But if that energy stays in the body, no longer about self-preservation. There's something there that has to go. And I facilitate, it's funny. I used to look at it as a curse, because so many times I would date someone that would go on and get a really significant relationship or get married after me. But there's something that I've been really blessed with, that a lot of women have told me, like, I just feel comfortable around you. Like, usually I get triggered by men with beards, but you're okay.
Well,
so yeah, there's a lot of elements to what I do, and every session is different, and it's a fun exploration.
How can people find you and contact you?
I'll be providing you with some links when you do post this.
Yeah, definitely.
My main email is coachyvesleblanc@gmail.com. So
yeah, we'll provide everything in the description too.
Yeah, make sure to look at the links, because it's not spelled like it said. You're going to have people out there, EVE.
I worked at a call center for 3-4 years, and not the best suited environment for me. But when people would go, "What, Steve?" I'm like, sure, whatever, go with that.
Well, thank you so much, Yves, for being with us, for providing your story, talking about your journey. Is there anything else that
before we turn off, I want to see him do?
No.
Oh,
I was gonna ask him if he wanted to share anything else before we see his magic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see if let me just tune in. Let me see if there's anything else that's worthwhile. You know what? I'm going to say this in case, to men that might be listening, and this has been a big part of my journey, is that the destination isn't emotional volatility. It's not being in emotions. it's emotional mastery. And you need to be in touch and not repress your emotions, but being overly expressive and like swimming in emotions isn't something that's going to allow you to structure your life and to be safe for others around you.
Awesome. And, I think it's just so powerful the more, not only women, but like the more men can really embrace their own healing in the way that is really supportive for them. It really helps just change our world. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, let's get into the magic. We actually went into this with your last session. It really turned on through your incarnation cross when we were contemplating it. Your gate 60, which Vicki has the full channel of the 360, and I have the 3. So that's kind of like a cool synchronicity that is showing up right now, and it's all about mutation. So I'll let you take it with the magic that we get to witness.
I'm just going to go a bit more on that last point. There was a meme that I found again yesterday, and you might have seen it. It's the meme where there's like a man with like a woman, like a girlfriend, and he's looking at this other woman, and there's like this shocked kind of like, have you seen that meme?
Yeah.
And it's the masculine, it's like being emasculated, and the man's like, ooh, consciousness. But then there's like leadership and responsibility. And a big portion of my path and a lot of things is that within the energetic realms, there's a lot of feminine energy, a lot of feminine messages. And it can be healing at first, but sometimes like there's a different energy and a different healing that's required for men. And we can get lost in that world. I really got lost in that world. And there's more and more organizations, men's circles, things where men are teaching other men how to structure their lives and their energy. And it needs to be taught in a different way. So there's resources out there, but they're not often found within the energy community. And it can be a bit of a drug almost of the healing and the nurturing that we receive through that. And we don't necessarily look at men as like, what do I need to do to really like improve my structure?
That's a great point. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah,
Lauren, let's play.
Okay, I'm excited. This will be my first time receiving this.
So if you touch like right here, because I've been feeling this for probably 5-6 minutes, and you go a bit lower and more towards the outside of your shoulder blade there, a bit like there, what do you feel? What emotions or what comes up when you're touching, putting pressure there?
Almost like stress. That's the first word that comes to mind.
What else? What's underneath? If you put a bit more pressure and you like go for like a deeper emotion, what's under there?
It's like this weight, like it's like just like this over responsibility. Like it's like
over responsible for what or who? First thing that comes to mind.
My family.
Okay. And if you imagine your life without that responsibility, what emotions come elsewhere in your body?
Can you repeat that?
So if you imagine your life without that weight and responsibility for your family, what emotions arise somewhere else in your body? So you're just imagining this complete, beautiful life without that. But if you were to let this go, you already would have. So there's something that you're hanging on to for some other reason. What else do you feel?
So I'm like feeling it in my chest right now. So it's like this tightness.
And that tightness that's on your chest, if you put both hands there, you can leave that on your. What does that provide for you if you have that, having that tightness in your chest?
It's like this protection.
From what?
It's like control. Like I almost know what's gonna happen.
Right, so you're controlling. So if you're listening, notice we're just going down in layers, or like we're going with like, oh, there's stress, there's weight. Now we're like moving to the chest. We're going to this protection. So one modality that I use is theta healing, which is offering an energetic download, knowing or understanding, so that you can release things. And you just need to say yes to receive it. So I'm going to tap into that. Let's see what's there. And can we show you and tell you from source, from God, from creator, that it's safe to let that go? Show you how you can protect yourself, protect your energy, protect your needs and what you desire from the energy of others, that no one can take that from you, that it's safe, that it's possible to live your life without that tension, that your life will be beautiful, that it'll be guarded, that you'll be cherished without that, and you can allow yourself to be vulnerable, let your aura protect you rather than you controlling it with your mind and intellect. Would you like to know, receive, understand that energetic signature, what it is like to embody it, and to let go of any shame, guilt, or accumulated stress from holding on to that for too long? Would you like to receive that download?
Yes.
You just take 4 or 5 deep breaths. Imagine that you're melting away some of the tension on your shoulder with each exhale. All right, so let's check in. What are you feeling in your chest right now?
I feel like a lot of it kind of like melted away.
So
And
a
it
lot of
wasn't
it,
as
but not all?
tight. No, I feel like it's still melting away. Like it's
Okay.
like feeling more comfortable. And like as you were talking, I was picking up that I can be in my joy and not take life so seriously, and that no matter what happens, like I can almost like laugh at it. Like I don't need to react, and that's actually my safety.
Right. And you might laugh later. You might have something happen after the session where you're like, I'm just going to laugh for half an hour and really let it go, because right now you still have that tension in your shoulder. If you put your fingers back to where that was, what are you sensing there now if you press into it? And I want you to find there's like one little knot in there called the trigger point. And right around there, just a bit where you're close. Yeah, there. If you really press into it, yeah, what's there? That's the gold.
Ooh, yeah. What immediately came to me is like, and my dad has transitioned, but it's like for whatever reason, my body, I saw my dad's hand there. Like he's like, has had this hold, and it's on my right side.
And can you give me like even though you may not have a specific memory, can you give me a context? Because the sense I have is kind of like like grabbing you on the shoulder, like really quick. Is that accurate?
I don't know if it actually happens. I don't have a conscious memory. It could be, I'm sure it could be from anybody. But
let me know if you want to do this here, or I can hold the space offline as well. And I'll offer you that this is an exercise. It would be to speak like your father was here and just flow with whatever needs to come out, because you're holding that energy there. And we could do it now or we could do it later, because I don't know what'll come out. You're not even sure either. Would you want to do that now, or would you prefer that we kind of
could do that later?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted people to see like your process, and this isn't about my process, obviously, but just kind of give people the demo.
Right.
But that was really powerful. I didn't even realize that. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And it's layers. So there's an element of how I work. Often there's like the surface 1 or 2 things of tension, and then you get to something deeper. And those deeper layers only surface after you peel the 3 or 4 things first. So we had to go here. Oh, what's here is connected to your chest. All right, let's go explore that. And let's go back. Okay, you've released something. And now like, ooh, now we got the really the core, this little kind of like, ooh, that's the gold there.
Yeah.
And following that, like I was saying earlier, then it's like, all right, let's restructure how you move. Let's get you to put that energy, which you said was like worrying about your family, what do you think, or whatever it may be. And now all of a sudden you have all this extra energy that you can apply somewhere, like could be your business, could be something else.
Right.
So there's that. And then physically, it's like, okay, well, if your shoulder has been like jacked like this, like higher for, 22 years, just because that energy's gone doesn't mean that those muscles aren't firing a specific way or pattern that is actually not going to just recreate itself after, because it's just like muscle memory. So it's also about activating something else, getting something else in your energy, in your body, in your life, to put that focus and energy towards, so that it structures in a way that is leading you towards what you truly desire.
Amazing. So this is how the projector gets to be seen. You have to realize, like, this is why projectors can't initiate. Imagine if this juiciness, this magic, this amazing wizardry was trying to get in without being recognized through the invitation. I mean, so many people would miss out. So my hope from this podcast, from our time together, so many people who are looking for you and your magic find you, recognize you, reach out to you, and benefit from, I've been to so many different masseuses, body movement people, healers, all the things. And I have to say, probably there was only one person who is very, very like into energy more than anything, was able to kind of shift some things for me, but she held amazing space. It was very much her presence and knowing. Everyone else, it was like, oh, let me try to get these kinks out, but there was no long-term solution. So, and I just knew as you were sharing what you do, I'm like, this is it. This is the magic. This is where we're going to. This is how energy and people get to heal. And that's why I really wanted to highlight you and your projector individual mutant genius.
And the beauty of it too is a projector. It's like almost once you're dialed into something, once I see something, there's ties from what we were just looking at to your right foot. And the body's so interconnected and linked, and like that, unless you have someone that has that awareness, or like you were saying, like massage without doing the energy work first, it is the massage therapist fighting of your body's tension, wanting to hold on to it because it's keeping you safe. Right. And it's painful and doesn't really yield much results. Like if you were to go through the process and let go of this thing around your father, then go for massage, it really would very little matter who you'd go see, because I've experienced as well where I would do some online work and work on myself and let go of a lot of stuff and go to the student clinic of the school, and the person barely had to touch me. My body was like, we're releasing now.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so good. Well, Vicki, do you have any other questions, thoughts?
No, I'm just sitting here in awe. I'm kind of jealous. So no, that was amazing. So thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. And it's been a pleasure.
That's been fun. I love being in the spotlight.
Spoken like a true projector.
Right?
Well, thank you to everybody that has tuned in, that has shared your space and energy with us. If you want to contact Yves, we will provide all the links to that and his contact information in the description to this episode. And until next time, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye,
Thank you so
everybody.
much, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Hey, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, we absolutely love your feedback. So check out those links below and reach out with your insight, feedback, and even your ideas. And until next time, remember...
That's all, folks.